An old friend is better than two new ones. The base 1.6 atmospheric with conventional distributed injection is the best choice. The popular G4FG unit, with almost half of the cars like this, belongs to the Gamma 2 family. Released back in 2006. From the ancestor of the G4FC series, this follower of the 2010 sample, among other things, differs in a more reliable bush roller timing chain, which replaced the lamellar one just in honor of Soul's debut. But it still has a light alloy cylinder block with thin-walled cast iron liners and 16 valves that require clearance adjustment by selecting pushers every 100,000 kilometers. This is also a reason to fight oil leaks. The valve and front covers of the engine sometimes fog up from a young age. And after 100 to 120,000 kilometers, they are often supported by crankshaft oil seals. In general, a mileage of at least 250,000 kilometers for a 1.6 engine is in the order of things, if only it does not harm its own converter. Not only is it rather weak, it is also attached close to the cylinder head. It happened that the ceramics of its honeycombs began to crumble after 70 to 80,000 kilometers. And a drop in traction or a rattle with an increase in speed after 100 to 150,000 kilometers is a harbinger of $700 to $1,000 for a new collector. It is not surprising that often they prefer to simply remove its filling. The main thing is that the abrasive crumbs of the crumbling converter do not get into the cylinders, which is especially likely with misfires. In addition to old candles, after 100,000 kilometers, faulty ignition coils can also lead to this. $20 branded and half the price of analogs. Another cause of unstable speed is the throttle valve, which requires cleaning every 50 to 60,000 kilometers. In a version of the 1.6 G4FD engine equipped with direct injection from the same Gamma 2 family, with such a quarter of cars, after 100 to 120,000 kilometers, the speed often floats due to contamination of the channels and intake manifold dampers, and the intake valves are expected to quickly overgrow with deposits. Otherwise, everything said about the fellow G4FG with conventional distributed injection is true for this engine. Except perhaps faster. After 120 to 150,000 kilometers, the timing chain can stretch. And when Borg-Warner turbochargers were hung on the engine and turned into a G4FJ unit, 5% of cars, in the GT version, this led to an even greater reduction in the life of the chain, and at the same time the pistons. The 2-liter engine of the G4NA series on restyled versions, 23% of cars, belongs to the more modern new family. Appeared in 2010, and it adds not only dynamics, but also potential worries. As with units 1.6, an endoscopic examination of the cylinder walls upon purchase is highly desirable. After 100 to 120,000 kilometers, ceramic crumbs are trying to mess up here too. A non-instrumental sign of trouble with the converter is a decrease in traction, first at high speeds. In addition, here on successful pistons with thin rings and a minimum distance between the partitions overheat with unpleasant consequences in the form of increased oil consumption and scuffing on the cylinder mirror. But the Soul's piston cooling oil jets make the situation less critical than on its third-generation Kia Optima cousin. Valve clearance hydraulic compensators are demanding on cleanliness and optimal clatter lubrication pressure. And if the channel of the timing chain tensioner is clogged, this leads to its weakening and inconsistent operation of the motor. All engines are sensitive to thermal conditions. Flushing the radiator at least once every couple of years will not be superfluous for sure. And the cooling system fan can also complicate the life of a 2-liter engine. In the case of pre-styling copies older than 2015, make sure that the previous owner did not miss the campaign to replace the multi-fuse and resistor, which also involved updating the engine ECU program. The single pre-styling versions with the D4FB diesel, 1% of cars, are also not the best object for a targeted search. In addition to the fuel equipment, which is extremely sensitive to the quality of diesel fuel, after 100,000 kilometers, a turbine can add problems. Next is the upper chain and the timing drive, EGR valve and particulate filter. And that's not counting the little things like accessory belt rollers, a pressure regulator, or fuel pipes cracking with age. The vast majority of Souls, 80% of cars, have the well-known 6-speed automatic A6GF/MF, a traditional and quite successful unit of the 2009 series with children's sores already treated. Although Doors styling cars were engaged in sabotage, it was an inconspicuous working fluid temperature sensor that decided to give out incorrect data. The sensor has been finalized. Restyled cars younger than 2016 are unfamiliar with this problem. With careful handling of the box, it is only necessary to change leaking gaskets and seals after 140 to 150,000 kilometers. And renew the oil at least once every 50 to 60,000 kilometers, remembering that aggressive driving leads to accelerated wear of the torque converter locks, and then to failure of the control system hydraulics due to overheating and wear products in the oil. But the 6-speed unit M6CF1 is not a role model among mechanical boxes. The release bearing, $30 original and from 10 analogs, can remind you of itself after 100 to 120,000 kilometers. And after 150 to 170,000 kilometers, shaft bearings can also buzz. After 7 or 8 years, due to the fault of the cable shift drive, gears begin to be selected worse. However, in most cases, adjustment can be dispensed with. But the leakage of the input shaft oil seal after 100,000 kilometers can, in addition, turn into slipping of the clutch due to oil getting on the driven disc. And what about the Dymo's D7 UF1 7-speed robotic gearbox with 2 dry clutches, which is put on a rare Soul GT? So far, there are few comprehensive statistics on it. Although, in addition to problems with the initially damp and systematically improved software, cases of replacing clutches after 50 to 60,000 kilometers are already known. The ground clearance, increased as part of the adaptation for our market by a centimeter, up to 153 millimeters, did not affect reliability. The suspension does not crumble, but it does not forget to remind of itself, especially on pre-styling cars. First, predictably, with inexpensive struts and stabilizer bushings after 40 to 60,000 kilometers. There was no special margin of safety for ball bearings, $40 branded and from 15 substitutes, capable of breaking already at 40,000 kilometers. Shock absorbers, together with thrust bearings, began to wither after 50 to 60,000 kilometers, often falling into decay earlier than 80 to 100,000 kilometers. The front ones are branded for $60 and from 40 high-quality analogs. The rear ones are $35 and $20 respectively. Subsequently, the ball joints and shock absorbers were modified. But even in restyled cars, wheel bearings, the front ones go separately for $30 for the original and from 10 analogs, and the rear ones, complete with the hub for $80 and $35, respectively, are able to buzz after 80 to 120,000 kilometers. The rear semi-independent suspension is much more durable. Silent blocks of an elastic beam rarely require attention before 120 to 150,000 kilometers. But the rack and pinion steering mechanism for pre-styling specimens older than 2014 turned out to be that talker. After 40 to 60,000 kilometers, the plastic bushing at the output breaks, and then the steering shaft bearing strives to connect to the conversation. Even steering tips sometimes last longer, up to 60 to 80,000 kilometers, and tie rods, up to 120 to 140,000 kilometers. In addition, even on warranty runs, he tried to fail, hanging up and helping unevenly, and the Euro itself successfully fought the problem by reprogramming its control unit. The braking system, subject to timely maintenance, does not present surprises, except that its brake discs wear out surprisingly quickly. The front ones are sometimes only enough for 30 to 50,000 kilometers, so instead of the overly tender original ones, $60 each, it is better to use analogs from famous manufacturers. You can also save almost twice. The electronic filling of serious problems will not throw up yet, but on trifles, not averse. After 5 or 7 years, vision problems can begin in the rear view camera, which is poorly protected from dampness, and the usual sonar systems for parking assistance quietly fail one by one or collectively. The smart key door sensors no longer recognize the key. Power windows sometimes glitch and lose their orientation, and the head media device can freeze or reboot for no reason during operation. Some even changed under warranty. The heating of the steering wheel, along with other buttons on the spokes, may cease to function in 5 to 7 years due to the fault of the contacts in the wiring loop, and the threads in the heating elements of the seats, and by themselves. In terms of corrosion resistance of the body, Soul cars are not much different from other representatives of the current generation of countrymen. 10 to 12 legs will last for sure, and then how lucky anyone is. Both the paintwork and metal protection are thinner than is now accepted, for example, among the Germans. Warranty staining has already happened, due to the beginning surface corrosion under the lining of the tailgate and sills. And it's better not to pull with the tint of chips, especially on the edge of a non-galvanized roof. Snowdrops bloom after the first winter. For 3 to 5 years, the exterior finish under chrome loses its gloss. And a weak windshield, $300 to $400 branded and from 100 substitutes, can fall into disrepair even faster, having collected the entire collection of troubles in 2 or 3 years, chips, rubbing and clouding. Saving on washer fluid and the quality of wiper brushes is absolutely contraindicated, and it is better to prefer more durable and affordable, $100 to $130, glass from famous manufacturers to expensive original, for $500 to $550.